Ron, why don't you start with tell us about your background? Tell us, get out of school. Tell us about how you launched your career and, kind of bring us into the present.
Sure. So I went right from undergrad to law school because, quite frankly, I had no idea what else to do. And in fairness to the situation, from 8th grade till about senior year of college, I became very bored with school. Law school was probably something I really started to enjoy academically because I finally felt I was learning something that might be applicable to the remainder of my life. Law school is a really interesting experience of really learning how to learn, more so than any other academic environment I'd been in. And while I was in law school, through an on-campus interview, I had a dozen. I received an offer to work for the United States Securities and Exchange Commission in their New York office. I was told 6 of us were hired out of an applicant pool of 2,000.
Wow.
When we started, of the 6 of us, let's see, 4 of them were put into general enforcement. This other guy, Bruce Newman, was put into the broker-dealer enforcement unit. And I was put into the aisle of misfit toys from Rudolph. And I was put into the 40 Act enforcement group, which pre-Madoff, nobody knew who that was and what that was. Yeah. I mean, literally, it was such a misfit. We only kept the negatives of our team pictures. But anyway, humor is really not my forte. And I went from enforcement in the 40 Act arena to work at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I went from there to a large law firm, which is now Paul Hastings' New York office. And then I debated on going to other large law firms. Instead, I tried a small law firm. And I hit a very interesting stage of my career. And I have to imagine this might be relatable to most late 20-somethings. I felt like I didn't fit in. I intellectually enjoyed what I did, but the environment wasn't something that seemed natural to me. And I debated on either going into recruiting for lawyers. Funny enough, I got approached by 2 people to be an agent in the sports side. And I say it's funny because I'm more into music and movies. And while I enjoy sports, I'd rather play them. Yeah. And I'll watch playoff games. I'm not like an avid consumer of sports. And I spoke to other people who sort of scared me away from that. And so instead, I founded Sadis and Goldberg with a few other guys. And at the time, I had 6-month-old twins, and their mother was home with them. I had $30,000 in business, maybe $10,000 in the bank, and a mortgage. Just the right amount of runway you want to have when launching a business from scratch. But I would say, and if you watch my entrance video at our firm website, I really talk about the emotion because it stayed with me. And there was that fear of, like, I don't have a safety net. Something doesn't go right, I can't pay my bills. Well, at the same time, I have all these obligations as a lawyer, and you have to manage the risk of running a business. And so I would say for good, and I'm not exaggerating, for a good 15 years at least, and I commuted from New Jersey. I was in the city by 7:30 in the morning. I was going home 10, 11 at night. And weekends, my ex-wife used to get upset with this. Probably a couple months in, I was like, okay, I know I need to cut my lawn, but I can pay somebody $100. And instead, in the 3 hours I do it, if I bill X, I have a net profit of $500. And she's a teacher. And I remember her looking at me with this disgusted look, like I just committed a mortal sin. When all I did was do an economic analysis, I'm like, it's more logical for me to do the work.
Right.
And by the way, it reduced my stress because either way I had to do the work, and it would have meant I had to wake up either much earlier or stay up much later. So, and then growing the firm and working with partners, everything was new. And every aspect of it was new, meaning having real partners day to day for the first time. And I'm proud to say two of my other partners, now the third one has passed away because he's a lot older and I did not kill him. I wasn't there. But the other 2 were all each a year apart. So there's my partner Doug's a year older than me. My partner Jeff's a year older than Doug. We've been partners now for, going on 28 years.
That's amazing.
It's like a marriage, but you have to learn, because it's not like a marriage. We chose to learn how to work with one another. And guess what? You screw it up all the time. I equate it to being a parent. Being a parent, for any of those people, if you're parents, you get it. You screw it up and you're, oh my God, like I've like completely messed my child's life up. It is funny watching my son, though, at the age of 28, asking where his crayon is with his knife when we're at a restaurant, because that's what he thinks a fork is. But so then it's also learning subject matter, because it's constantly evolving, and it's building out the team and attracting people and supervising people, and maybe sharing a vision where you get other people to buy into the vision, and then getting clients and maintaining clients. And I'm sure, like me, you've had the experience that there's no bad client. They're all just a pleasure to work with and friendly and happy to pay bills. So you have to learn to deal with like sensitive, uncomfortable subject matter, because if you don't, nobody else will.
Yeah.
So like I just developed different patterns, which I don't know if any of this will make sense to you guys. Things I hated doing, some point like 20 years ago, I'm like, look, I need to learn to embrace those things I hate, because I'm going to have to do them over and over again.
Right.
And if I embrace them, maybe I'll learn to enjoy it, but at the very least, I'll learn how to do it better. And so part of what makes, in my mind, a good lawyer, and this is, I think, tied to the culmination of the steps I've taken to get to where I am, is learning to be a good partner, learning to be a good manager of people, learning and enhancing and continuing to always develop empathy. Empathy for everybody around you, your partners, your employees, your clients, and being thoughtful. And these are things we don't learn academically. It's sometimes learning to cut people breaks. It's sometimes learning how to share bad information with people in an honest and sensitive manner. And all that goes into lawyering. And like I said, Skylar's seen me more in action, not necessarily he has as a lawyer in the capacity of various events, but it's sort of along the same vein, because you're communicating with people, and who am I to say your opinion is wrong? Now, in fairness, I can say people are wrong when it comes to the law.
Right. Right.
There's some things that are clearly wrong, but it's also understanding and having empathy to the business side. And as you probably know, most of my clients are private equity funds, hedge funds, venture capital funds.
Yeah.
And the misnomer there is these are not always people that have oodles and oodles of money. And they're human, and they have strengths and they have weaknesses.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said about that, Ron. Just kind of obviously starting out, launching a business, to me, from a fun perspective, it is a new business, right? So I'm sure you can relate to a lot of your clients having that empathy. Hey, you're starting something new. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of, you're spending money, all these things coming.
There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear.
Right, right. So
and by the way, if they don't have fear, then there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fear, the right amount of fear is healthy. Too little of it and too much of it, that's not good.
100%. 100%. I'm curious, just from your lens, as you talk to your clients as a fund formation attorney, all different shapes and sizes, as you mentioned, all types of clients, asset classes. There's a lot of push and pull across the entire spectrum of what they do. And I'm sure they've been told a certain thing about hiring a law firm, hiring an attorney. My view, obviously, it's not just transactional. It's more of a relationship. It's a trusted advisor. It's not just endpoint of docs, right? Love to get your thoughts about.
Yeah. So one of the common mistakes, and it started to occur in 2008, how we consume goods and services evolved with the advent of the internet and the financial crisis. And it hasn't stopped, and it continues to commoditize goods and services. Some goods can be commoditized, hence Amazon, hence Costco, and all these other services that are proliferating and become very powerful. Certain services cannot. And what I was telling somebody earlier today, it's sort of shocking. Some people spend more time shopping for clothes and looking them up than they will picking a doctor, picking a dentist, picking a lawyer. And the mistake consumers of private funds at times will make is they look at it as a binary decision, meaning I just need you to launch my product. That is a person that hasn't truly understood what it is they are doing and may learn some difficult lessons in life. And I can simplify it to make this relatable. I had used the same technology person for 8 years in my home. Great guy, and I genuinely miss him. He died like somewhere in the last 12 months from leukemia. And I have some complex technology. I hired him because I wanted him not only to set it up, but to backstop things. So when things go wrong, nobody would know better than him. And as I'm picking a new person, they don't want to touch the old stuff. And I'm explaining to him, I'll pay you for the learning curve, but it's not just fixing things. I want a relationship that will be 10, 15 years. So now apply that to a legal product. There are much more nuances in the drafting of documents. Now, usually the consumer does not know it until there's a problem and you see where the documents work. They may think they know it by feedback they get from other people. But the truth is, unless somebody's reading every sentence and every paragraph of every document, they don't know. It's like trying to judge what's under the hood of a car by the car make and the year. Might have some idea, but you don't know. So what goes through my head is when I meet with my clients, and I mean this sincerely, is I explain to them, I'm going to be your cheapest partner. And I approach it as if I am their partner. And Scott, think about how I speak to you over the years.
Right.
It's not, you're a human. I speak to you as a human, not because it's planned or I'm designing to try to get the most out of you. That's how I'm wired.
Right.
And there are times I've taught clients out of products. One of the trends I'm seeing right now is very routinely, I'm receiving people who've created product using firms that I would say have no right to be doing this. And funny enough, I had 2 people reach out to me in the same 2-week period. Both had the same incorrect structures done by 2 different firms. So there's a lot of people that are in the marketplace are like, all I need is the documents. I can tweak them. You know what? I've been doing this 30 years and every day is a learning day for me. And for what I need to understand, I need to understand the Securities Act in 1933. That's more than 10 pages, and there's no cliff notes, really. Mm-hmm. The Exchange Act of 1934, the Investment Advisors Act in 1940, the Investment Company Act in 1940, the Internal Revenue Code, state laws, Commodity Exchange Act. You need to understand FINRA's rules and regulations and how this all fits in together.
Right.
And then you need to understand what are commercially acceptable terms in the marketplace. And shockingly, they don't stay static. It's maybe dynamic. So you saw it when crypto came on the scene. And we've been doing crypto since the beginning of crypto. And there was a whole back for a good 2 years. People are like, no, I don't need securities law. This is crypto. It's a new thing. You haven't seen it all, man. It's like, no, you need somebody who understands the Investment Advisors Act and understands crypto as an asset class and the liquidity features and the valuation issues and forking and every other related thing. And now Bitcoin wrap products. Yeah, no, you need to know all of it. So so it's, what I like is it's not a static business. I enjoy staying challenged, but that was part of the learning curve in practicing law. And the other thing I've learned, and I assume that both of you can agree to this, while I will meet people who do not understand the market of what it is I do, they're like, they're trying to be courteous and they're doing the best they can. So there's no point in my getting angry. But how long will it take? How much will it cost? What's the ongoing fee? What do I get? Thank you very much. If I'm interested, I'll be in touch. As opposed to, do you have tax lawyers internally? Do you have regulatory lawyers internally? Do you have ERISA lawyers internally? Whether you're starting with $1 million or $1 billion, less like you may need it with $1 million, but you might. And if you're outsourcing tax as a law firm, You get what you pay for. We used to do when we first started. It's not the same result or product. It's tailored. Everything we do is tailored to the strategy, tailored to the structure, tailored to the circumstances. Now, by the way, I will be proud enough to admit my own stupidity. Like 20 years ago, we had our trust in the states law, and I was like, hey, can you do a will? And he's like, well, yeah, it'll take me this, this, and this. I'm like, and I literally stupidly said, but don't you just go in and change the names? So I myself have engaged in the same stupidity in my infancy, in my like early 30s.
Yeah, definitely. There's no one size fits all, right? That's the fallacy.
No, and I have to imagine the two of you have that same experience.
100%. Yeah, definitely. It's
Definitely.
But you can't educate. It's not our place to educate the consumer.
Right.
They don't want to be, they may say they want to be educated, and we will acknowledge we have a conflict because we're biased. But the truth is, what I've learned is every time I've tried to educate, well, it's a good use of time for the people. It was not, I don't believe, a good investment of my time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm curious. You mentioned, like you have the two clients like come over to you, both of them had issues with their docs. Like what type of, can you talk to us a little bit about that? Cause I think it's an experience that I'm sure other people have dealt with or maybe will deal with in the future.
Yes. I will try to simplify it. So bear with me a moment as I contemplate how I want to phrase it. So pre-2008, when people were launching both an offshore fund and an onshore fund, when I say onshore, I mean U.S. domiciled, usually Delaware form. On average, and there's exceptions to everything I'm saying, the Delaware domiciled fund was designed to take money, except investment from U.S. taxable investors. The offshore fund, which depending on the time in history, they used to be organized more in Bermuda, then Cayman came on big on the scene, and the British Virgin Islands. And now we also have Ireland, depending on where the investors are domiciled, and Luxembourg, and there's Malta, and there's Guernsey, and there's Jersey, and there's Panama. I mean, there's a plethora of jurisdictions. Those were designed to take usually a non-U.S. person's money. And I'm lumping all non-U.S. persons in there, which is not accurate because post certain laws, AIFMD to be particular, which is the Alternative Investment Fund Managers Directive, which created barriers for EU investors being solicited by non-EU managers. Let's leave that aside so people don't think I'm ignorant and I'm simplifying the message. Normally, you had the non-U.S. persons going into the offshore funds and U.S. tax-exempt investors. And not to elaborate, but the tax-exempt investors would go into the offshore on average for funds that were engaged employing leverage or margin indebtedness in their portfolio construction. I'm not talking about inherent leverage, which might result in unrelated business taxable income. If that same tax-exempt investor invested in a portfolio leverage with margin indebtedness in a Delaware domiciled fund, they would potentially be subject to a tax called unrelated business taxable income. But with the offshore fund, it's set up as a corporation to block UBTI. That's the background. These two funds, so in 2008, those funds usually used to have a third entity they would invest in. So the Delaware feeder and the offshore fund, they were both called feeders, and they would invest into a third entity called a master fund. And the portfolio was invested in through the master fund. Now, master feeder structures, which is what they're called, continue to exist today. But in 2008, with the financial crisis, you saw a growth in what are called mini masters to reduce the cost of an audit and any other related fees tied to the master fund. And normally, you have the offshore fund invest in the U.S. fund. Normally, there's exceptions to everything I'm telling you. In the two funds I saw, there was a Delaware fund investing into a BVI entity, not a master, but another feeder, which was accepting tax-exempt or non-U.S. persons. But that fund is structured as a corporation. The corporation does not issue K-1s. Somehow your U.S. person's investing in the Delaware feeder. They may want to file a tax return in the calendar year or the fiscal year, depending on certain things. If they can't get a K1, they have a problem. Now, your non-U.S. persons and your U.S. tax exempt, if there's leverage, they don't want you issuing K1. They don't want tax as a partnership. Now, you could create multi-classes, which none of these funds did, which makes it more complicated. It sort of makes you scratch your head saying, you're fixing this broken toy with Band-Aid and tape. So no one even had the conversation with these people. That's just like the glaring issue, like on page 1. That's like the simple stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did they come to you, or is this something, you just like happened across their docs and yeah?
Oh, no. So here's what happened. One of the people came to me, very nice person, and she's like, something seems off. Can you review it? And then I was like, look, unless there's some other thing I'm missing, this doesn't make sense to me. And here's like 8 other problems. And I picked up 8 other problems. Like, no, all truth in about 5 minutes. So I'm like, you know what? If you want, I'll be nice. Like, this is my given. I will speak to your lawyer, your current lawyer. Maybe there's information I'm missing. Maybe I haven't wrong, because I'm human. I've got blind spots. I make mistakes. Feel like quoting Johnny dangerously, but I'm not. And I killed him. But that's for all those movie addicts out there.
I'm one of them. Yeah.
I got on the phone with the lawyer, and literally, I don't know if you checked my background. I don't know if his wife just beat him all morning, but he started capitulating before. I just said, hey, great to meet you. He's like, if there's something wrong you noticed, it wasn't me, it was him, but I'll take responsibility. I'll fix it. It's like, dude, we didn't even start talking about anything.
A lot of backpedaling before we...
The guy fell on the sword.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the managers have now spent most likely $20,000 or $25,000, which is lower than what's considered market for the industry. And I'm like, look, could I go into the document, start revising everything? I could, but it's going to cost more money if I do that. Quite frankly, it's economically more efficient, and you will get a better work product to just toss out what you had done. And other than maybe your bio, your investment strategy, port some of that in. But I also realized and learned from these experiences, the managers are not even asked the right questions. And I apologize for getting technical, and I can slow it down, but did they ask you whether you wanted side pockets? Did they walk you through valuation? Did they walk you through the regulatory thresholds? Are you trading futures or commodities? Has anybody mentioned whether you have to register as a commodity pool operator? Are you taking on any separately managed accounts? Like, what states are you in? There's so much. There's an interesting trend. In 1997, when I co-founded Sadis with a few other partners, I left my name off. Back then, it was the Wild West. You could go on the internet and read so much wrong guidance. And then the industry started to institutionalize, and it became homogenized, and you started to see less and less of the wrong guidance. And I'm only putting this together right now, live on the spot. I'm starting to see the fragmentation of the stupid that's back. And by the way, I was there in 97. I was still learning a lot. But now we're talking close to 30 years later. And the industry, unfortunately, is going through a stage where there's been major growth of people, not lawyers and non-lawyers, that say we can put your documents together. $5,000, $10,000. And for anybody listening to this, I'll let you in on a secret. You get what you pay for.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So, and it's not just the legal. It's also the acumen of saying, here's the right auditors. Here's the right prime brokers. Here's the right third-party administrator. Or maybe you're too small for a third-party administrator. The economics won't work. You want side letters. The routine question, can I pay somebody who introduces my fund to an investor? Most of the time you can, yeah, if you want to break the law. So there's just so many other unrelated issues to the launch of a product. And there's just a lot of bad guidance where people, if I don't know, I'll let you know I don't know. Unfortunately, Skylar's probably heard that more than once out of my mouth. But if I tell you I know something, you could bet all the money in your house. I know what I'm telling you I know. There's no shame in not knowing.
Right.
No, it's helpful.
The shame is when you don't know, telling people that you know.
Yeah. 100%.
100%. Yeah, definitely. No, that's great, Ron. I was just going to mention a couple of things. One, I mean, I love the kind of the backdrop of kind of setting up of like where we've been and now where we're going. I'd love to hear more about, as you've grown your firm, I'm sure a lot of people can glean from this. You know, there's challenges with hiring people, bringing up a newer generation, you know, with new lawyers looking to kind of take the torch moving forward. Just curious your thoughts on how you've kind of gone about that over the time and where we're at today and hiring new talent as you grow your firm.
Yeah, I mean, so interestingly, you hear people marginalizing, you hear people anywhere from like 40 on up marginalizing the 20-somethings and saying it's a different generation. Yes, it is a different generation. They grew up with things I didn't grow up. But while technology is advanced, people are people. And the good and the bad of it is people have not advanced as much as on a human level, medically we have, but personality-wise, psychologically we have now. If we advance, why is war going on in the Middle East? Why has Russia become an aggressor? What the heck is going on with China? I don't even want to talk about Iran.
Yeah.
So I would tell you, I feel like those were the comments I heard when I was in my 20s. There are some people that care about working hard. There's others that sit there and say, you know what? Quality of life's important to me. We all had friends that said the same thing. So some of our younger lawyers we hired that have military experience. And not because we're going to war at Sadis, although some days it feels like that. It's more that they are about processes. They've had a different upbringing. And in many cases, it's less of an I and it's more of a we or an us. But there's a lot of good people out there. And there's marginal people and there's a few that aren't great. And not everybody's going to be a fit. And not because they're not smart, not because they're not good people. They're just unique skill sets. And it's taking us like decades to figure how to manage people. Like we were quick to hire and slow to fire if you went back the first 10 years. Now we're quite frankly the opposite. We're slower to hire. And if in a few months somebody doesn't seem to be working out, we don't want to embarrass the people. We're here to try and help place them.
Of course.
But there's a certain skill set, a certain personality type that is really better suited to practice law at a law firm. And there's things that I have to imagine I wouldn't be good at that I'm not as well suited for. And I've also had the luxury of learning on the job. But I really am an eternal optimist. I do believe in people. I do believe in humankind. And I feel responsible for every single person here, whether they're in my group or another group, whether they're a lawyer and admin. I used the word employees earlier today. Hate that word. I really, really hate that word because I think it marginalizes people. And it bothers me because I don't think I'm any better than any other people I work with. I may have a higher threshold for pain, but in fairness, I'm an equity owner. Not everybody here is an equity owner. And so the risk reward is different. But that's part of the other guidance, by the way, when people are launching funds. It's some of our clients will involve me in the interviewing process to assist them. Not many, but some. And then many others may document it on their own, which is a bad move. They don't do background checks. Bad move. And not because a person's a criminal or a thief, although they may be. But once people are here, in fairness, or any of our organizations, do we really follow up to see what they're doing in social media? Now, some places may be too harsh on it. But I have a story I remember, thankfully not a client of ours, but there was a CFO of a big fund, big, I mean, talking like 4 or 5 billion, I think. It's about a decade ago. And they were being acquired by a BlackRock-like firm. It wasn't BlackRock. I know who it was. I just don't want to say. And I knew the general counsel. It ended up that the CFO lied about their academic credentials, and it's like 20 years later. And through the acquisition, they finally did a background search. And it was about graduating college, which I think they ultimately didn't graduate, or maybe they didn't graduate and they said they did, but I'm pretty sure they didn't graduate, if memory serves correct. How embarrassing that is for the firm that's being acquired. It's like, no, we do background checks on all of our employees, every fund we set up. I've had 1 or 2 clients be difficult, but over the last 15 years, my attitude is, if you're difficult, that's your problem, not my problem. It's an expense of the manager, but they're welcome to it. And the reality is, they should want to know what's out there. We had a client who I've known for 25 years. Great guy. Call him up in his background check. I'm like, I just want you to know. It came back, and he has a common name. Came back to be arrested for dealing pot. He starts cracking up. And by the way, Skylar, you may even know him. Just a nice, like, he actually is a client. I'd love to have every one of my clients be like him. Great guy. He starts laughing. I'm like, dude, I know it's funny. It's not an issue for me. And I know you're telling me it's not you. But what about other investors now that might somehow do a search on you?
Good point.
So better to be forewarned than forearmed, right?
Yeah. Great point. Something not a lot of people probably think about.
Yeah.
No. So look, I've been now, let's say it's 27 years I've been running a business, and not passively, quite actively. And there's days I want to, turn it off if I'm taking a day off. But with the employees, it's on the employer as much as it is the marketplace. And yeah, there's times where it's harder to hire. I'm pretty sure we're at a stage where it's going to get easier and easier to hire. The pendulum is swinging the other way. Now, that's not changing our hiring practices here. And by the way, it's always easier to hire the people you know. Not always, most of the time.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm curious, like how has the industry changed over your time? You guys have been doing this for, I don't know, 25, 26 years. What type of evolution have you seen, in the industry?
Okay, so I started at the beginning. Focus was mostly emerging managers. It was a nascent market back in 97. It was a lot of fun. It was exciting. It was, and I'm a very literal communicator. I do not exaggerate, even though sometimes it may sound that. Even though I happen to be a 6'10" person of color, you probably can't tell. But literally, no exaggeration. For 20 years, it was overwhelmingly busy. And maybe for 2 weeks in August, when everybody else was dead, I was just busy. I wasn't like overwhelmingly busy. 08 hits, merging, the entire field of private funds changed. Private funds previously were financed by family offices and wealthy investors, individuals. It became more institutionalized. As 08 hit, the allocation of assets went more and more to the large institutions and less to the emerging managers or the middle market. At the same time, we entered the longest bull market in history. Less volatility, pretty much a lot of long-only players. While at the same time, people, lawyers and consultants need to make a living, and they somehow stake a claim in the private fund sector. So they crowded in. There's been a capitulation in the last 12 months by emerging managers of a realization of how challenging it is to raise money. Now, that said, we have managers that started 8 and 10 years ago, still while it was challenging. It went from a few million to a couple $100 million, or some went to $2 or $3 billion. And while at the same time, there's just been an increase of number of service providers in the industry, third-party administrators, lawyers or lawyer lookalikes, and accounting firms, and all across the price spectrum. So I would say while it's been a little, I'd say it's quieted down the last 10 months. I expect you will see a shakeout in the viability of many people who would otherwise tell you that they are busy, or they're in a narrow segment of the market. And I don't know if they're doing the work at the level they need to do based on their price points. It takes one malpractice case to wipe your firm out. And if you're a consumer of these goods, you don't want your auditor to end up on the front page. You don't want to find you call your lawyer and they're out of business, because it reputationally can be damaging. Economically, it can be costly. And two, over the years, you actually get to know your vendors, hopefully, where you've trained one another in how you conduct yourselves with one another. So that's some of the changes which are going on, while at the same time, there's a lot of change in regulation and there's a lot of change in the sentiment about how the SEC is viewed.
It's actually a great transition. I'd love to pick your brain on, some of the work you did on the SEC side of things. Why don't you talk to us about some of the work that you did on that front?
So I remember when I killed my first man. Now, shot him right between the balls. Yeah, so I worked on a few Ponzi scheme cases. And then interestingly, so there was one, it's called an affinity fraud. An affinity fraud, it could be a cultural connection, a religious connection, a communal connection. Somebody retired from IBM. And they went to all the other people they knew from IBM who invested with the nephew of the person that retired from IBM. And basically the guy was running a Ponzi scheme. And somehow, I don't remember how, but I ended up working with the FBI as well. And on not just that case, on one or two other cases, where funny enough, they wanted to second me, which means I would have been employed by both the FBI and the SEC. SEC wouldn't allow it because somebody was seconded years ago. So it was on their budget, but they never got the guy back. So, but it ended up coming down to a car chase in Atlantic City. I think he bought a used car, and that's when the FBI found and arrested him. I worked on some really interesting technical matters and violations of the Investment Advisors Act, violations of the Investment Company Act. And it was an interesting first job to have because I was deposing people. And one of the tricks I did sometimes to freak people out, because I'm wired that way. God forbid you ever get deposed. In many cases, they'll ask you, people, do you know these people? And they'll give you a litany of names of who you know. And I have to imagine if I'm sitting there, you don't want to feel like you're narking on people. And when you hear the names, now you're like not sure if they said anything about you and threw you under the bus. So just to screw with them, I would also make up other names of people there's no way they knew. Like, do you know Daffy Duck? Really? No. So I actually did do that to psychologically, and it wasn't to mess with them and to hurt them. It was to really separate the honesty from the dishonesty. And when I was at the SEC, the presumption was I definitely wasn't getting open kimono. So when I started going on the private sector, it was a very interesting perspective to see how the world works from this side. And the SEC, they're just trying to do their job. Something goes wrong with the markets, or there's a theft or a fraud, they get blamed. And the reality is they don't have a big enough budget. There's not enough people there to do their job. It's like cyber insurance or cyber protection, right? Everybody says they have it, and yet very few people do. And nobody wants to spend real money on it. Or I shouldn't say nobody, but far fewer people spend the money on it than they should otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, obviously there's some cyber rules coming down by end of the year for funds, right? I'm just curious, where the big, obviously you mentioned quite a few of the kind of risks to a manager launching funds, as you talked about. You have a unique perspective from your lens, from CC point of view. What are some other kind of things that managers miss as they launch funds? And obviously as we get to more regulatory, pipe there.
I give it to you in like maybe enumerating it through 5 numbers. I think first and foremost, It's your biggest risk is if you have a partner, business partner. People do not spend enough time just discussing the future, and you're not going to cover everything. And we're picking the right partner. How far apart are you in age? How far apart are you in economics based on your net worth? If one person's worth $100 million, one person's worth $1 million, person worth $100 million may not work as hard as $1 million person. They may not have the ability to sustain not making material income for several years. So your greatest risk is partner in my mind. Second greatest risk is your employees. Do you have the right employment agreements in place? Are you monitoring them correctly? The third biggest risk are your investors. How are you communicating with your investors? Are you just casually responding to emails or texts? Did you give them a pitch book? Has that pitch book been, before they invested, has it been reviewed by legal counsel properly? We had a client in 2008, 2009, launched with a lot of money for that time in history. And a year and a half later, I get a call on a Friday at like 5 o'clock. I'm like, I've never spoken to this guy. I've only spoken to his henchman. I call an associate in because I'm like, nothing good can come from this call. And basically, somebody famous who 90% of the people on the planet know who the person is, sold them shares of an illiquid asset. And they want to know if they could do it. I'm like, can you send me your pitch book, your marketing materials? I never saw them. And they held out that they only invested in the most liquid securities. I'm like, yeah, you can't do it. And the guy's like, I don't like you. And I'm like, on one hand, it bothers me because I want to be liked by people. But on the second hand, I'm a lawyer. Sometimes I'm not going to be liked by virtue of what I say. He did the deal anyway. Years later, he had to settle and basically lost everything he had.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So your investors are the third greatest risk. Fourth greatest risk are your counterparties. Is it a Lehman or a Bear? Is it a party that does not know what they are doing that you have every reason to believe they do? And then finally, it's the regulators.
Yeah, definitely. That's, I appreciate the perspective there. That's definitely, I think people think about one aspect of that. You know, obviously they're investors going into it. There's a lot of other tentacles, to your point, to keep track of and monitor. And obviously have somebody like you kind of take a look at employment agreements and things like that. And it's never like we talked about, a one size fits all situation.
No, it's so not one size fits all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah.
That's really interesting because, like, yeah, that's one of the things that I feel like people don't really think about, you know, especially like the type of investors you kind of work with, things like that. You know, people just want the capital a lot of times.
We all do things in desperate times that may not make sense.
Yeah, 100%. Are there other horror stories? Because I feel like the one you just mentioned is like great because it's just like it's, you know, it's a great example of something that actually happened.
There are several horror stories. I mean, there's never ending horror stories. This one I can speak to on the record because I had to testify. Got a call from the IRS. Had a client comes to me, want me to assess their business. No BS. 2 giant binders this big. Took about 2 weeks, go through it. I had the unfortunate joy of having to say to them, pretty sure you're running a Ponzi scheme. If you want to go to the SEC and help you settle with them. We don't like her advice. 4 years later, I get a call from the Department of Justice. We want you to testify. I'm like, I can't. Attorney-client privilege. About 9 months later, they call me back. You know, we can testify. Why? The client said they relied on your advice. If you assert reliance of legal guidance, it waives the attorney-client privilege. I go to court in Michigan. It ends up being that they invested in an underlying Ponzi scheme. And so they were promising returns that were a little less than what the Ponzi scheme promised. They ended up going to jail.
Wow.
And then, funny enough, I was asked by defendant's counsel, did you write them a memo? I'm like, no, they fired me. Why would I write them a memo after they fired me? I tend to not like to work for free. Well, how can you prove it? And so I'm like, look at my billing records. It's in my billing records from back then. Right now, I'd flip them the bird, but I can't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
They teach you in law school, do not ask a question to which you don't know the answer to before you ask the question. Apparently he missed that day.
Anything here that you want to talk about, Ron, that we haven't talked about yet?
Look, now my camera moves finally. There's so much to talk about, but I would say maybe you have me back and we can go and talk about more things.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, this has been great, Ron. A lot of good insight for people who are looking to start funds. They haven't thought about kind of the full mechanics. And obviously, there's a lot of nuances with regulation, to your point, and everything that's happening in the space. So definitely it's important to have a good trusted advisor. It's not a transactional relationship, right?
Yeah, it should be a long-term relationship, not just with your lawyer, with your accounting firm, with your third-party administrator. Yeah. Yes, sometimes things occur that cause you to change, but your business may die on the vine if you hire the wrong people at the outset. And by the way, there are times, not the reason you hire us because we don't get paid for this. There are times we make introductions because we're in the know, but not the reason you hire us. I've had people say, I heard you know a lot of people and you can introduce me. Not how I work. That's, if we know we can help, we try.
Right.
But that's how we also get clients from other clients.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's great.
You're judged by the company you keep.
Yeah. Well said. Absolutely. Totally agree.
Awesome. Well, Ron, it's been a lot of fun. Where could people go to connect with you and learn more about your company?
You can go and email me at rgeffner@sadis.com, Sadis, or think of sadist without the T. You could call me on my landline, 212-573-6660. Alternatively, you could also go to our website, www.sadis.com. And I'm also all across the social media platforms on LinkedIn, as well as Instagram, but I'd rather keep the business on LinkedIn versus Insta.
Amazing. Well, that's great, Ron. We'll make sure to include all that in the show notes. And this has been great, my friend. Appreciate you joining us.
Oh, pleasure's mine. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for being patient with my long-winded responses.
Oh, no, they've been great. They're great to learn and from your experience. I think everybody will enjoy it as well.